In the vast, glittering expanse of the Orion Arm, the Galactic Imperium had ruled for 10,000 years. A sprawling, magnificent edifice that spanned 1,000,000 suns, it had brought order and prosperity to countless worlds, binding them together under a banner of unity and purpose. But such was the way of all empires to rise, to flourish, and inevitably to fall. The seeds of the Imperium's demise were sown in the very triumphs that had made it great. Decadence and complacency crept in. Corruption took root, and slowly, inexorably, the shining beacon of civilization began to tarnish and decay. The end, when it came, was sudden and brutal. A series of catastrophic shocks, a devastating alien invasion, a galaxy-wide pandemic, a catastrophic failure of the Imperium's life-sustaining infrastructure combined to bring the once indomitable Colossus to its knees. In a matter of months, the order of centuries collapsed, and the galaxy was plunged into a dark age of strife and dissolution. On the fringe world of Zephyrus, Captain Kiera Morin watched the fall of the old order with a mixture of dread and grim anticipation. A veteran corsair, leader of the infamous mercenary band known as Morin's Marauders, she had spent her life navigating the shadows of the Imperium, walking the thin line between legitimacy and lawlessness. With the Imperium's fall, that line had been erased. The galaxy had become a brutal free-for-all, a mad scramble for power and resources by every two-bit warlord and would-be conqueror. For those like Kiera, possessed of a sharp blade and sharper wits, it was a time of great danger and even greater opportunity. "Captain," we're being hailed, the voice of her comm officer, a lithe, blue-skinned Zathori named Lyra, jolted Kiera from her musings. "It's the Obsidian Claw. They demand to speak with you immediately." Kiera frowned, an uneasy feeling coiling in her gut. The Obsidian Claw was a notorious pirate clan, known for their brutality and their fanatical devotion to their leader, a ruthless Kirathi warlord named Zekrath the Undefeated. For them to be contacting her directly, here on the edge of civilized space, put them through, she said, steeling herself. Audio only, the comm crackled to life, and a harsh, sibilant voice filled the bridge of her ship, the Star Fury. "Captain Morin, I am Warbringer Cracks of the Obsidian Claw. I speak with the authority of Lord Zekrath himself." "I'm listening," Kiera said warily. "What does your master want with me?" "Your reputation precedes you," Captain Cracks hissed. "The Claw has need of those with your particular talents. We are gathering a war fleet to take advantage of the chaos left in the Imperium's wake. Lord Zekrath wishes for you to join us, to lend your strength to our cause." Kiera felt a chill run down her spine. She had heard rumors of the Claw's activities, whispers of conquered worlds, of entire populations enslaved or slaughtered. They were a plague, a cancer spreading unchecked through the war-torn galaxy. "And if I refuse," she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Then you will be destroyed," Cracks said simply. The Claw brooks no defiance. "Join us or perish, Captain. The choice is yours." The comm went dead, leaving Kiera in a heavy silence. She looked around at her crew, saw the same fear and determination etched on their faces. They were a motley bunch: humans, Zathori, Krell, a dozen other species united by adversity and a fierce loyalty to each other and their captain. They had fought together, bled together, and now it seemed they would have to make their stand together. "Well, shit," Kiera said at last, a grim smile tugging at her lips. "Looks like we pissed off the wrong pack of space rats." "Orders, Captain," her first mate, a grizzled human named Jax, asked. Kiera took a deep breath, her mind racing. To defy the Obsidian Claw was suicide. They were far too powerful, their reach too long. But to join them, to become party to their atrocities, it was unthinkable. And yet, what choice did they have? The galaxy was coming apart at the seams, every petty tyrant and would-be conqueror scrambling for a piece of the spoils. The Marauders were good, but they were just one ship, one crew against a rising tide of darkness. Unless... An idea began to take shape in Kiera's mind, a desperate, audacious gambit. It was a long shot, a 1 in a million chance. But if it worked, it might just turn the tide, not just for the Marauders, but for the entire galaxy. "Set a course for Nexus Station," she ordered, her voice ringing with a new resolve. "We're going to need allies for what comes next." Jax raised an eyebrow, but nodded crisply. "Aye, Captain. Plotting course now." As the Star Fury leapt into hyperspace, stars blurring into streaks of light, Kiera allowed herself a moment to close her eyes, to picture the faces of those she had lost. Her parents killed in a pirate raid when she was just a child. Her brother, conscripted into the Imperium's armies and never seen again. Her first love, victim of a deadly plague that had scoured entire worlds. So much loss, so much pain. And now, with the fall of the Imperium, it seemed that the cycle was doomed to repeat itself, an endless spiral of suffering and despair. But not if she could help it. Not if the Marauders could rally others to their cause, forge a new coalition from the ashes of the old order. It would be a long and perilous road, fraught with danger and uncertainty, but it was the only path forward. The only hope for a galaxy on the brink of oblivion. Nexus Station was a sprawling metropolis of a spaceport, a crossroads where the trade lanes of a dozen sectors intersected. In the Imperium's heyday, it had been a shining hub of commerce and diplomacy, a symbol of the galaxy's unity and prosperity. Now, it was a madhouse, a seething hive of scum and villainy. With the collapse of central authority, the station had become a nest of pirates, smugglers, and mercenaries, all vying for a piece of the action in a galaxy gone mad. As the Starfury docked, Kiera and her crew were greeted by a cacophony of sights and sounds, the roar of 100 different languages, the reek of unwashed bodies and exotic spices, the flash of garish neon, and the glint of hidden weapons. "Stay sharp," Kiera murmured as they disembarked, her hand resting on the butt of her blaster. "This place is a powder keg waiting to blow." They made their way through the crowded concourses, past seedy cantinas and shadowy back alleys, until they reached their destination, a nondescript door in a forgotten corner of the station, marked only by a faded symbol of an outstretched hand. Kiera knocked twice, then 3 times, a prearranged signal. After a moment, the door slid open, revealing a dimly lit room filled with a haze of smoke and the murmur of hushed conversation. Captain Morin, a figure detached itself from the shadows, a tall, elegant Krellian with silver-streaked fur and piercing amber eyes. "I had a feeling our paths would cross again." "Ambassador Jean," Kiera said, inclining her head in respect. "Or should I say, former ambassador?" The Krellian smiled thinly. "Titles mean little in this brave new galaxy of ours. But come, let us speak in private. I sense you have much on your mind." He led them to a small, soundproof chamber, gesturing for them to take a seat around a battered holotable. As the door sealed behind them, Kiera let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "I'll get straight to the point," she said. "The Obsidian Claw is on the move. They're gathering a war fleet, intent on carving out their own empire from the ruins of the Imperium, and they want the Marauders to join them." John's eyes widened fractionally, but he showed no other sign of surprise. "I see. And what did you tell them?" "Nothing yet," Kiera said. "But I won't be their puppet, John. I won't help them unleash more suffering on an already broken galaxy." The Krellian leaned forward, steepling his fingers. "Then what do you propose, Captain? To defy the Claws to court destruction? You are formidable, but you cannot stand alone against their might." "I know," Kiera said grimly, "which is why I've come to you. You still have contacts, John, in the remnants of the Imperium, in the other mercenary guilds. If we could bring them together, forge an alliance against the Claw and the other warlords." John was silent for a long moment, his eyes distant. "It would be no easy task," he said at last. "The old rivalries, the old hatreds, they run deep. It would take a leader of great charisma and vision to unite them." He looked at Kiera pointedly, and she felt a sudden weight settle on her shoulders. "You can't mean..." "John, I'm no politician, no great unifier. I'm just a soldier trying to keep my crew alive." "And yet, here you are," Zahn said softly, "seeking not just survival but something greater, something worth fighting for." He leaned back, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "I will do what I can, Captain. I will reach out to my contacts, sound out potential allies. But the hard work of forging this coalition, that will fall to you." Kiera took a deep breath, feeling the enormity of the task before her. But beneath the fear, beneath the doubt, there was something else, a flicker of determination, of resolve. She thought of her crew, of all the innocents caught in the crossfire of the galaxy's descent into chaos. They deserved better than this, better than a future of endless war and suffering. "I'll do it," she said, her voice steady. "I'll be the leader they need, John. I'll bring them together, or die trying." And so began the great work. the desperate gamble to pull the galaxy back from the brink. Kiera and her crew ranged far and wide, from the glittering core worlds to the lawless fringes, rallying support for their cause. It was a grueling, perilous endeavor. They fought pitched battles against the Obsidian Claw and the other warlords, striking swift and hard before fading back into the shadows. They brokered tense alliances between old foes, appealing to their honor, their sense of self-preservation, their last shreds of idealism. Slowly, painfully, a coalition began to take shape. Disaffected Imperium loyalists, rebel cells, mercenary guilds. One by one, they gathered under Kiera's banner, drawn by her courage, her tenacity, her unwavering commitment to a better future. And at the heart of it all was the crew of the Starfury, the beating heart of the resistance. They were the vanguard, the tip of the spear, always the first into battle and the last to leave. They bled and sacrificed, driven by a bond deeper than blood, a shared dream of a galaxy reborn. There were losses, painful and profound. Good soldiers, dear friends, falling in the line of duty. Each death was a fresh wound, a brutal reminder of the price of their struggle. But still they pressed on, buoyed by each small victory, each new ally won to their cause. And then, after a year of ceaseless struggle, came the break they had been hoping for. A daring raid on an Obsidian Claw shipyard uncovered a trove of intelligence star maps, fleet dispositions, the location of Zekrath's stronghold. It was the chance they had been waiting for, the opportunity to cut the head off the snake. If they could strike hard and fast, decapitate the Claw's leadership, it would throw the warlords into disarray, give the coalition a fighting chance to turn the tide. The plan was audacious, bordering on suicidal. It called for a massed assault on Zekrath's bastion, a simultaneous strike by every ship and soldier the coalition could muster. They would come at the Claw from every angle, every vector, overwhelming their defenses through sheer, desperate valor. Kiera and the Starfury would lead the charge, a blazing spearhead aimed straight at the heart of the enemy. They would be the anvil, the immovable object, holding the line while the rest of the fleet hammered the Claw into oblivion. It was a plan with no margin for error, no room for second chances. If they failed, it would be the end, not just for them, but for the dream of a free and united galaxy. But if they succeeded... Kiera stood on the bridge of the Starfury, watching the fleet assemble on the view screen. Ships of every size and configuration, from sleek frigates to lumbering battlecruisers, all bearing the scars of 100 battles, 1,000 skirmishes. They were a ragtag armada, a patchwork of mismatched parts and desperate hopes, but to Kiera's eyes, they had never looked more beautiful. "This is it, people," she said, her voice steady over the shipwide calm. "Everything we fought for, everything we lost. It all comes down to this." She looked around at her crew, at the faces that had become more dear to her than any family. "I know I've asked the impossible of you, time and again. I've led you into the fire, into the jaws of death itself, and still you stand with me, still you fight for what we believe in." She took a deep breath, her heart full to bursting with pride and love and a fierce, defiant hope. "So, I ask you one last time, my friends, my brothers and sisters in arms, stand with me today in this final battle. Fight with me, bleed with me, and if the fates decree it, die with me. For the fallen, for the future, for the dream of a galaxy reborn." A roar went up from the crew, a primal, wordless cry of assent and determination. And in that moment, Kiera knew that whatever came, whatever horrors and heartbreaks the battle held in store, they would face it as they always had together, unbroken, unbowed. The Starfury leapt into hyperspace, the fleet closed on its heels, and the stars blurred into streaks of light as they hurtled towards their destiny, towards Zekrath's stronghold, towards the crucible that would forge the future of the galaxy. They came out of hyperspace, guns blazing, the coalition fleet fanning out in a broad wedge, with the Starfury at its apex. Ahead loomed Zekrath's bastion, a monstrous conglomeration of asteroids and derelict ships welded together into a makeshift fortress bristling with guns and teeming with fighters. The space between the fleets erupted into a maelstrom of fire and fury as the Claw's defenses opened up, filling the void with a hail of missiles and energy beams. The coalition ships scattered and weaved, pouring out a blistering counter barrage as they drove forward into the teeth of the enemy's guns. At the heart of the chaos flew the Starfury, a lance of silver slicing through the tumult, its shields flaring as it shrugged off salvo after salvo. Kiera gripped the arms of her command chair, jaw clenched as the deck shuddered beneath her feet, the ship groaning as it strained against the onslaught. Power to forward batteries, she roared over the din of battle. Concentrate fire on the defense platforms. A series of almighty explosions bloomed along the bastion's flank as the coalition's guns found their mark, smashing gun emplacements and missile batteries into glowing slag. But even as they fell, more weapons swiveled to take their place, spitting death into the onrushing swarm of ships. One by one, the coalition vessels began to falter and fail, venting atmosphere and debris as they were hammered out of the fight. A Krellian cruiser, its hull spider-webbed with cracks, spiraled into the path of a salvo of torpedoes, vanishing in a conflagration of light and shrapnel. A flotilla of rebel fighters, swarming like angry hornets, was swatted from the sky by a volley of flak, their fragile hulls shattering like glass. But still the fleet pressed on, driven by desperation and a ferocious, unyielding will. They were so close now, the bastion looming before them, like a malevolent mountain of metal and stone. Just a little further, just a few more minutes of hell and bloodshed, and they would be through. They would be at the enemy's throat. "Brace for impact," Jax shouted as a massive blast shook the Star Fury, sending sparks cascading across the bridge, shields down to 20%, hull breaches on decks 4 and 5. Kiera gritted her teeth, tasting blood where she had bitten her tongue. "Reroute power from all non-essential systems. We just need to hold together a little longer." And then, through the chaos and the carnage, a miracle. A sleek, silver shape, darting through the maelstrom like a fish through rapids, a rebel corvette, battered but unbroken, slicing past the bastion's crumbling defenses to hammer at its exposed flank. And another, a handful of ships, seizing the opening torn by the sacrifice of their comrades, pressing the attack home with desperate valor. Now Kiera roared, surging to her feet. All ships converge on the breach. Pour it on. Like wolves scenting blood. The remaining coalition ships hurled themselves at the wound in the enemy's side, a tide of metal and fire crashing against the bastion's buckling armor. The Star Fury was in the van, its guns blazing, its prow aimed like a spear at the heart of the fortress. With a tortured groan of rending metal, the bastion's hull gave way, and the coalition ships surged through the gap, emerging into a cavernous hangar bay seething with smoke and flame. And there, rising from the inferno like a demon from the pit, was the Obsidian Claw's flagship, a monstrous dreadnought, its hull encrusted with the jagged black stone that gave the clan its name. Zekrath Kiera snarled, her eyes fixed on the looming behemoth, all power to engines. Ramming speed, the Star Fury leapt forward. The last of its reserves poured into its straining thrusters. It was a suicide run, a final, desperate charge, but it was the only way, the only chance to end this once and for all. Kiera Jax's voice, raw with emotion. "It's been an honor." "The honor was mine," Kiera said softly, her hand finding his, squeezing tight. "All of you. You're the best crew, the best family I could have ever asked for." The dreadnought loomed before them, its guns swiveling to bear, its cavernous maw yawning wide to swallow them whole. Kiera closed her eyes, picturing the faces of those she loved, those she had lost. She thought of her parents, her brother, her first love. She thought of Jean, of the dream they had shared, the future they had fought for. For the fallen, she whispered. For the future. For the dream of a galaxy reborn. The Star Fury struck the dreadnought like a thunderbolt, a lance of silver fire piercing its heart. For a single, breathless moment, the two ships hung together, locked in a fatal embrace, and then, with a blinding flash and a roar that shook the stars, they vanished in a maelstrom of light and fury. In the silence that followed, as the smoke and debris slowly cleared, the remnants of the coalition fleet limped forward to secure the bastion. They found no trace of the Star Fury, nor of the brave souls who had crewed her. They had given their lives to strike the killing blow, to bring an end to Zekrath's reign of terror, but their sacrifice had not been in vain. With the Obsidian Claw broken, its warlord slain, the tide of the war began to turn. One by one, the other clans and factions fell into line, some through diplomacy, others through force of arms. A new order began to take shape, rising from the ashes of the old, not an empire, but a confederation, a union of free peoples bound together by shared values and common cause. At its head stood those who had fought beside Kiera Morin, who had shared her dream and her burden. Jax, the grizzled warrior, now a general and a statesman. Lyra, the sharp-eyed pilot, a diplomat and a peacemaker. Jean, the wise old ambassador, a father figure to a new generation of leaders. They worked tirelessly to rebuild what had been lost, to heal the wounds of a shattered galaxy. They forged alliances, brokered treaties, fought the good fight in council chambers and on battlefields. And slowly, painfully, a new era of peace and prosperity began to dawn. They knew that the work would never be finished, that there would always be new challenges, new threats to face. But they also knew that they would face them as Kiera had taught them, with courage, with compassion, with an unwavering commitment to the greater good. And so, as the years turned to decades and the decades to centuries, the legend of Kiera Morin and the Starfleet passed into history, then into myth. But their legacy endured, woven into the very fabric of the galaxy they had helped to save. In the glittering spires of the core worlds and the wild, untamed reaches of the frontier, in the hearts and minds of every being who called the stars their home, the memory of their sacrifice, their courage, their unbreakable bond lived on. They had been the spark, the flame that had kindled the fire of renewal. And though the galaxy would face many trials in the ages to come, it would never forget the debt it owed to those brave few who had stood against the darkness and brought back the light. For they were the Marauders, the warriors, the dreamers. They were the best of what the galaxy could be, the shining soul of a civilization reborn. And in the end, that was enough. That would always be enough. As the centuries passed and the galaxy rebuilt itself from the ashes of war, the legend of Kiera Morin and her valiant crew only grew. In the halls of power and the streets of 1,000 worlds, their names were spoken with reverence, their deeds celebrated in song and story. But there were some who knew that the tale was not yet complete, that one final chapter remained to be written. For deep in the uncharted reaches of the Outer Rim, a secret lay hidden, waiting to be discovered. It was a young explorer named Soren who found it quite by chance. While charting a new hyperspace route, his ship was pulled off course by a strange gravitic anomaly. Emerging from the turbulence, he found himself in a star system unknown to any map, a place of haunting beauty and eerie silence. At the heart of the system hung a massive space station, a relic of a bygone age. Its hull was pitted and scarred, its once gleaming metal dulled by the passage of eons. But still it endured, a monument to the ingenuity and tenacity of its builders. With a sense of mounting excitement, Soren docked his ship and ventured inside, his every step echoing through cavernous halls of rusting steel and flickering hololights. And there, in the station's central chamber, he found a vast archive, a treasure trove of knowledge and memory. It was the legacy of the Starfury, the final gift of Kiera Morin and her crew to a galaxy they had loved so dearly. In the chaos of the final battle, they had uploaded everything, their logs, their memories, the sum total of their hopes and dreams, to a secret network of relay stations, a safeguard against the possibility of their loss. And now, after centuries of waiting, their story could finally be told in full. Soren spent months exploring the archive, poring over every file and fragment. He learned of the crew's early days, their first tentative steps towards unity in the face of overwhelming odds. He saw their triumphs and their tragedies, the bonds of love and loyalty that had sustained them through the darkest of times. But most of all, he came to understand the true depth of their sacrifice, the magnitude of what they had given to secure the future of the galaxy. In the final entries, recorded in the moments before the Starfleet's fateful charge, Kiera spoke of her hopes for that future, her faith in the strength and resilience of the spirit that had brought them so far. She spoke of her love for her crew, her gratitude for the precious time they had shared, and she spoke of her certainty that, whatever happened, their story would endure, that their legacy would live on in the hearts of all those who followed after. With tears in his eyes and a fire in his heart, Soren knew what he had to do. He gathered up the archive, every precious bite of it, and set out to share it with the galaxy. He took it first to the leaders of the Confederation, the great-great-grandchildren of those who had fought beside Kiera. They received it with reverence and joy, a priceless piece of their shared history brought back to light. But Soren didn't stop there. He traveled to every corner of the galaxy, from the glittering core worlds to the humblest frontier outposts, Everywhere he went, he shared the story of the Starfree, the tale of the heroes who had given everything to build a better future. And everywhere, the story took root and blossomed, inspiring a new generation to dream big dreams and fight for what they believed in. In the schools and academies, children learned of Kiera and her crew, aspiring to their example of courage and selflessness. In the halls of government, leaders invoked her memory as they worked to build a galaxy of justice and peace. A movement grew, a wave of renewal and rejuvenation that swept across the stars. United by the legacy of the Starfree, the peoples of the galaxy came together as never before, determined to build upon the foundation that Kiera and her crew had laid down. New alliances were forged, new frontiers explored. Under the banner of the Confederation, a golden age dawned, an era of discovery and enlightenment, unparalleled in galactic history. And at the heart of it all, guiding and inspiring, was the memory of the Marauders, the heroes who had shown the way. Years turned to decades, decades to centuries. Soren grew old and passed on, his mission fulfilled. But the story he had uncovered, the legacy he had helped to revive, endured and grew, passed down from generation to generation. And so, it was that, 1,000 years after the fall of the old empire, a young woman named Kiera stood on the bridge of her ship, gazing out at the stars. She was a descendant of the original Kiera, the latest in a long line of explorers and dreamers who had carried on the work of the Starfree. Before her stretched the vast expanse of the unknown, a galaxy full of wonders yet to be discovered. And in her heart burned the same fire that had driven her namesake, the same unquenchable thirst for adventure and knowledge. She thought of the legacy she carried, the weight and the glory of it. She thought of the challenges that lay ahead, the battles that would need to be fought and won. But most of all, she thought of the bond that united her with all those who had come before, the unbreakable chain of hope and determination that stretched back to the days of the Marauders. For the fallen, she whispered, echoing the words that had been passed down through the generations. For the future. For the dream of a galaxy reborn. And with that, she gave the order to set sail, to cast off into the infinite sea of stars. The adventure continued, the story went on, and at its heart, guiding and inspiring, was the memory of Kiera Morin and the crew of the Starfree, the heroes who had shown the way.